Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flick Show. My name is Chris Wong. It's an interesting day today as Jay Oliver, who we all know, he's a producer, an executive producer. He's done a lot of work, but mainly he is a huge storyboard artist for Marvel and DC movies. He's also directed a lot of DC movies, but he's mainly a storyboard artist, and he has been a storyboard artist for the Justice League movies. As we've already talked about him, how he's dropping huge bombs left and right. Well, today is no different. Today is a big one. And I'd say it's a big reveal for a lot of the DCEU fandom, including everyone else who was not entirely sure what is going on with the Justice League Snyder cut. Today, he made some huge announcements. One was just a little reply back to a gentleman by the name of Ryan Pay on Twitter. Steve had released the Snyder Cut, put out a picture where he says one has to go. He had put out a picture of Wonder Woman 84, of Aquaman, of Shazam, and of course of the Justice League Snyder Cut, in which a gentleman by the name of Ryan Pay has said, well, one of them doesn't and never will exist. And lo and behold, Jay Oliver shows up and he says this: it exists. It exists. But that's not all. A person by the name of Bob Chipman at the _ Bob, who I know now is a movie critic on some blog site, has said this: all conspiracy theories are born from 1% truth and 99% angry hope. In this case, the fact that it's true that Justice League got reworked a bit between directors allows angry fans to fantasize that an entire different version that isn't a huge disappointment must exist. This was posted on June 24th. Much later than we already know that it actually does exist, that there's irrefutable evidence that it does exist. In fact, Jay Oliver has also mentioned that a certain type of cut exists, an assembly cut, a final cut, whatever have you, that is that. Well, Jay Oliver decided to also respond. Hey Bob, it exists. Deal with it. That's it. 2 words. It exists has rocked the fandom today, rocked the entire blog site world, the entire comic book world, film world in general, and a lot of different media blogger sites have decided to write about it, saying that Justice League storyboard artist suggests that the Snyder Cut exists, in which he really just had 2 words to say to that, and that is, it exists. But that's not all. He decided to go on, dropping many more information than we, well, deserve perhaps. But it is very intriguing. He says this: I saw an early assembly cut of Man of Steel shortly after Principle was done, and it was pretty close to the final, except for some shots here and there. I know how Zack makes films. I worked on 4 for him, so obviously he is very much involved with 4 of Zack's films. He is very much involved knowing how Zack works and makes his film. Would you trust a man who is a blog site? Trust a man who is a movie critic, who really just watches movies but is not even part of the movie industry and even not part of the actual Justice League movie? Would you trust the words of him, or would you trust the words of a man who is a storyboard artist and worked with Zack and is part of the production team for Justice League to tell you these truths? I go on. Jay Oliver says he edits while he shoots, referring to Zack Snyder, and VFX is started in the storyboard stage, which is prior to principal photography. I'm sure the original composer already started scoring the reels as they come in too. The old way of Hollywood filmmaking is very different today. True DC News replies, pardon my naivety, when you say you are sure original composer already started scoring the reels, are you talking about the film score or something to do with finishing up visuals? In which Jay Oliver replies, music composer, so film score. So that is an interesting reveal, as that was a question mark in all of our heads if Junkie XL, aka Tom Hokenberg, or the vice versa, had actually finished filming, had actually finished scoring the film. Had he even started? Has he done any work? Well, according to this, if he shoots and VFX is starting the storyboard stage, which is prior to principal photography, even the original composer already started scoring the reels as they come into. And it is reported by Jay Oliver that Zack Snyder had finished principal photography. Could that be the case that Tom Hokenberg, aka Junkie XL, had finished scoring the film? It is quite possible, and it's very interesting indeed. A little bit of when I want to go back to that earlier tweet that I forgot to mention is that I saw an early assembly cut of Man of Steel, and that it was pretty close to the final, except for some shots here and there. So that would lead me to believe, and probably many others to believe, that Justice League was almost done. Was in its final stages, perhaps except for some shots here and there. We don't know the level of those shots, we don't know the depth of those shots, but it would be safe to say that because all the actors and actresses had moved on to other projects, knowing full well that they didn't have to come back to reshoot anything, that means Zack Snyder did not have extensive reshoots needed to be done involving the actors and actresses. Pickups here and there, not involving them. Perhaps just landscape shots, perhaps just connective tissue shots without involving any of the main actors and actresses. That could be the case, according to this tweet from Jay Oliver. And I know there were a lot of people wondering if Warner Brothers would just release an extended cut, an extended Whedon cut. And that's the extent of what Zack Snyder's Justice League cut would be. By taking parts of Snyder's cut and putting it into Whedon's movie, and essentially we'll be only getting a Joss Whedon extended cut. Carter Gray had this to say. He says, if Warner Brothers decides to release something about Justice League, do you believe we could actually get the Snyder cut? Or sadly, an extended cut of the Whedon's cut? Jay Oliver replied to this. I don't think an extended Whedon cut would work with all the cut stuff. So my gut is telling me that it would be Zack's cut, similar to the Donner cut of Superman 2. And so there is a tweet to differentiate between the Joss Whedon cut and the Snyder cut, because there are bloggers, there are people out there who believe that releasing the Snyder cut will be no different from the Whedon cut, because they still believe in the report from earlier back in 2017 that John Berg and Jeff Johns and Toby Emmerich and Kevin Tsujihara and Joss Whedon all came out and said that Zack Snyder had planned these reshoots. Zack Snyder needed these pickup shots. Zack Snyder had hired Joss Whedon, his quote-unquote friend, to do these shoots for him. Those same people that believe that report doesn't know any better, because those people are now gone. Jeff Johns is gone. John Berg is gone. Joss Whedon is gone. Kevin Tsujihara stepped aside, and Toby Emmerich is now in charge. Walter Hamada is now in charge. Chanto Nang is now in charge. All these people are the new Warner Brothers. So because of this new Warner Brothers regime, and because of what happened after Justice League, we can probably honestly and truthfully say that that old news article and those words quoted from their mouths, that this was Zack Snyder's plan, even though Zack Snyder doesn't know anything about a Russian family, even though Zack Snyder's shots were reshot by Joss Whedon, that none of those quotes from that report in 2017 were true. and that what we're going to get from the Zack Snyder cut is not an extended Whedon cut, because Whedon's cut was a totally different movie from the Snyder cut. And I think we can understand that now. Now, I know Mario Robles had put out an article today about the Snyder cut of Justice League that everyone seems to be missing. The biggest thing is that, yes, it's no longer Snyder's original vision of Justice League Part 1 and Part 2. Because after Batman v Superman, Jeff Johns came in and decided to make it one singular Justice League. That may be true. But here's the thing, is that movies change all the time. And the director always enhances or changes and mixes it up a little bit. But at the end of the day, if Zack Snyder himself, the director of Justice League, approves the cut that may or may not be released, that may or may not be 100% finished, if Zack Snyder approves that cut, then that is essentially the Snyder cut. Whether it was Part 1 and Part 2, whether it was changed or not, if Zack Snyder approves that cut, then that is his cut. And that is the Snyder cut that we are waiting to see. We are wanting to see. So again, this is Jay Oliva, a director of many of DC animated films. He's a producer of many materials. He is a storyboard artist for DC and Marvel material. And most importantly, he worked on Justice League. So these things that he's saying today is probably more truthful than bloggers, for movie critics, and even ourselves, who've never worked on any movie, who've never been in the actual movie studio, and most importantly, has never even worked on Justice League. Who do you trust? These two words should ring in our ears from today and on forward, and hopefully everybody else picks up on it. It exists. It's irrefutable. It's undeniable. And to many naysayers and movie bloggers and movie critics, it could be a cold, hard truth. The Snyder Cut exists. Now we just need Warner Brothers to come out and announce it. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.